Welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight for our, I believe it's our 6th annual Geena Davis Institute Symposium at Google, and we're thrilled to be here and hosting tonight. The Geena Davis Institute has been a key partner of ours for a number of years now, and we've been very privileged to partner on a lot of different projects. My name is Courtney McCarthy, and I lead our women's and kids media strategy on Google's computer science and media team. So what that means is, for about the past 3 years, we've been working to change perceptions of how computer science is shown. We want to inspire more girls, people of color, to realize that this is a field that's for them. And we do so by influencing content, working with content creators, writers, producers, just like you, to find avenues, find storylines where we can show women creating technology, and that this is for everyone. It's not just for the nerdy white guy or someone who's super smart. You know, this is something you can all learn, and it really is the key to our future. And so we've been privileged to partner with Cartoon Network, Disney Junior, Netflix, just tons of partners over the last few years. And we couldn't do this without our teammates. Jen Vaden Barth is here, and then Rhea Green also are a key component to this team. And so give them a round of applause. And so without further ado, I want to kick this off, but I'm glad you got to see this video. This was something that our Google marketing team released for International Women's Day, and I think it sums up what this past year has been about. And so we want to keep up this momentum. And I want to introduce now to you the CEO of the Geena Davis Institute, Madeline Denono.
Greetings, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? All right. So how many of you were with us in 2016 when we did our last Global Symposium? All right, fair showing. We've got a lot of newbies in the room, hopefully new members and donors, so thank you. And on that note, I want to, of course, thank Google. I want to thank Courtney. We have some of our other Google colleagues who aren't here, Hartwig Adam. We have Megan Rice-Camp, who is here, and you'll hear her speak on our panel later on. But we have some of our corporate sponsors here that we just want to give a shout out to: Amazon, Criterion Group, Facebook, the MPAA, MRC, Nielsen, 72andSunny, Sony, 21st Century Fox, and Walt Disney Imagineering. So glad you all could make it. And we want to give a very special shout out to our fiscal sponsor, Mount St. Mary's University, who's in the room. Woohoo! And also, one of our board of advisor donors is here, Susan Wright. Susan, where are you? Okay, great. And we have some very special guests who came from very far away. We have our lovely ladies from Barradine College in Auckland, New Zealand. Big shout out to them. Thank you for coming. So we're really, really excited to show you our GDIQ 2017 Top Family Films of the year, 100 films. And along with, we have an all-star panel, which will really talk about data-driven social impact. We're really excited about that. 2018 clearly is a critical time for our industry, for our research. the issue of gender inequity, on screen, our advocacy and our impact wouldn't be possible without the vision and the tireless efforts of our founder and chair, Geena Davis. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring up Geena Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, I'm thrilled to have so many of you here, and welcome our visitors from foreign lands. They flew in just for this, so it's very exciting. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm very, very happy, and so much has happened since our last Global Symposium for the Institute, of course, and for the world. I mean, we have really reached a turning point in our industry and in the world. I'm very honored to be a founding member of Time's Up, and I truly believe that we are now in the midst of a moment in time where significant progress can be made in our quest to reach gender parity and get rid of gender bias. At the Institute, data has always been the most powerful tool that we employ to impact on-screen representation of female characters. So it was 2 years ago in New York when we first revealed our new research tool called GDIQ, which was funded by our friends at Google, who we're so thrilled to be such close partners with, and grateful to them for sponsoring tonight and hosting us. It was developed at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. I can't remember what the GD part stands for, but the IQ is Inclusion Quotient. And since then, many of you are actually using this tool to help you make data-driven decisions and not just base your decisions on assumptions, because unconscious bias is called unconscious bias because it's unconscious, and we don't realize that we have it. And you're using this tool to help you in your portrayals of female characters on screen. So we're really excited to show you our new 2017 data, brand new. You'll be the first to hear it, and also to go over some of GDIQ's new tools that updates. We're constantly training it to do new things, and it can now do race, and there's a very exciting script analysis aspect of it as well. So we'll be talking about all that with you. Just think of it as spell check for gender bias. And that's hashtag. And we have a number of new research studies coming out. For example, given how we know how impactful media images are on children, we were very interested in an opportunity to study product mascots, right? The mascots that we see all the time. So in partnership with GelCert, who make Otter Pops, those frozen pop? Yes. So we partnered with them, and we conducted an analysis of mascots across the top selling products in the United States. And it was products such as bakery, beauty, dairy, deli, frozen, grocery, healthcare, pet care. I always remember the cereal mascots. But this is the first ever study to look at how gender and race are represented in mascots. And it was great. Unlike anything else, it was just already perfect. Similar to television and film, the images of mascots seen in brand advertising send subtle messages about which identities are more valuable to us and have the authority to confirm the value of a product. So here are a few highlights. For gender, male characters outnumbered female characters 2-to-1. When it came to body types, 1 in 5 female mascots was shown as skinny or very skinny. I think this number would have been even worse, but the red M&M doesn't have a waist. So that probably really threw the numbers. I'm just guessing. For race, people of color constitute 38% of the US population, but only 15% of mascots. So this means that many racial and ethnic minorities are virtually erased from product mascots. So then there's another topic that we care very deeply about at the Institute, which is how women and girls are portrayed in STEM on screen and also in various professions and careers. So we're extremely proud of a new study that we conducted in partnership with 21st Century Fox. Some of our friends from there are here tonight. And we're calling it the Scully effect or hashtag Scully effect, because it examined the importance of the Dana Scully character from the X-Files and how it impacted women's and girls' career choices. And it was fascinating. Here's a few highlights. Women who watched the X-Files regularly were 50% more likely to work in STEM fields. Nearly 2/3 of the women surveyed who work in STEM said Dana Scully served as a role model for them. So 2/3 of women in those fields were inspired by Dana Scully. 63% of women surveyed said Scully increased their confidence that they could excel in a male-dominated field. So obviously, we know media images have an incredible impact on us as far as seeing ourselves, somebody like ourselves reflected on screen. That tells us that we matter, that we must be important. To say, oh, there's somebody who looks like me. I must count. I must be important. And seeing women and female characters doing important things makes us say, oh, maybe I could do that. Someone like me is doing that. So think about what message we're sending to boys and girls at a very young age when the numbers of the characters are so wildly skewed in favor of boys. Nearly 3 male speaking characters, every 1 female character. And the male characters are the ones having the bigger adventures, the more exciting things to do, the higher goals, and are much more in leadership positions. So when the female characters are one-dimensional or sidelined or very narrowly stereotyped or simply not there at all, we're training kids from the very beginning to see that girls are less important than boys and women are less important than men. We're teaching them that women and girls don't really take up half of the space in the world, and they're certainly not valued to our society to the same extent. This is why I chose to focus on what kids see first. Why create a problem that we're all trying to solve later on by showing kids from the very beginning, from preschool shows, there's some notable exceptions. Teletubbies is gender balanced. I don't know if you could tell. But they are. They are very gender balanced. So it's just common sense. Let's stop creating this problem. And we know that all of you are trying to work on this problem. It's very important and it's very real. And it's very important also to remember that we all have unconscious bias. We can't escape it. It was ingrained in us from the beginning, and it's something that it's very important to realize, because only then can you conquer it. You know, it's almost impossible for someone to say, or it's very suspect if someone says, I hire purely based on merit. Really, are you positive that you can conquer your unconscious bias? Because without realizing it and taking very specific, dramatic steps to counteract it, it's nearly impossible to get rid of. But on the other hand, unconscious bias is not an evil plot, because it's unconscious. When people realize they have it, they work to overcome it. I mean, think about how dramatically different our world would be if we could raise kids from the beginning free of these biases. Show them from the beginning, boys and girls share the sandbox equally. They do equally interesting things, equally important things. They're equally funny and varied. They're not all just thin and pretty. You know, when all this started, I'm sure many of you have heard this story before, but the reason I started it was I couldn't find anybody who noticed what I noticed when I started watching little kids programs with my then toddler daughter. She's here tonight. She just turned 16. And so I noticed that there were far more male characters than female characters in what's aimed at the youngest kids. And I checked with my friends. None of them noticed. And I checked with people in the industry. I figured, well, I meet people all the time. And I couldn't find one person who said, I know what you're talking about. In fact, they all said, oh, no, that's a thing of the past. Gender has been fixed in media made for kids. And this is people making the media aimed at kids. So that's why I wanted the data, because I couldn't explain how this could be possibly true if something that seemed so glaringly obvious to me was not to other people. And it really was, because it was unconscious. And so the data has been the absolute golden key to making this change, because once people realize what the numbers are, they really want to make change. People who make entertainment, especially for kids, do it because they care about kids. And so they're mortified to find out that, that they're shortchanging girls. We did a very recent impact study that showed 99% of respondents stated that one person is, I don't know, they should be drummed out of the business. 99% said that our research influenced and inspired them to make changes in their work. So here are some specific comments. One person said, I ensure that girls and women make up half the characters in my show. A CEO said, we started doing script reviews to assess character speaking time between male and female characters. Managing director said they've been developing a new show with a girl's lead who tries out different careers. Every episode she tries on a different career. A development exec stated they changed one of their lead characters to a girl in their show, and she's now the funniest character as well. One executive producer said that at their company they always ask, what would Geena say about the scripts they're developing, which is a good thing to say. Good little motto to adopt. And acquisitions executives said they were developing a project involving girls with STEAM, that there are still a lot of stereotypes portrayed, even if they are gender balanced, and so they want to really focus on very interesting and complex female characters. So it's very exhilarating and satisfying for us, because movies and shows are coming out all the time that we know that we impacted. And what the advice that I give people is, once they become aware of the problem, is that one of the quickest ways, easiest ways to reach gender parity is take whatever you're already working on. You already had it written, it already exists, and before you cast it, just do a gender pass. Go through and change a bunch of first names to female, and with one stroke, now you've probably achieved gender balance, you've created some characters might be even more interesting with a gender switch, because they're not going to be stereotyped now if it was written for a man. If there's scenes that involve a crowd or a group, you need to write in the script, a crowd gathers, comma, which is half female. Because on the set, it's going to be dismally different than that. It's going to be profoundly different. So that's something really easy. People follow the words in the script. They follow the stage directions. Data is so important. It's only when we started tracking and measuring female roles in family media that we were able to influence change. And our mission and momentum have grown into a movement that I could hardly have expected about 12 years ago when all this started. We've seen great reactions, and based on the reactions that we get, I feel very confident predicting that the needle will move dramatically for female characters on screen in entertainment made for kids. It's the lowest hanging fruit in our industry, and it's something that we can change nearly immediately. In the real world, we are, I believe, at a tipping point. I think a lot of you also feel that way. But even so, in many sectors of society, it's going to take decades to truly reach parity. I mean, how long is it going to take until Congress is half female and half of the governors, and where it's just as likely that our president is a female as a male? But there's one part of one industry that's wildly, grossly imbalanced that can change overnight, which is on screen for movies and TV. And the time it takes to create the next TV show or movie, you can have reach parity. Even a director whose last movie was wildly imbalanced, the very next project he makes can be, or she makes, can be gender balanced. And then we are presenting a whole new vision of the future. We don't have to wait for society to turn around and then we will reflect that. we can show the future now, and then real life will imitate art. We can create the future now. And like we learned with the Scully effect and so many other instances, if they see it, they can be it. That's our motto. And if we show it, it's going to happen. And life will imitate art. Thank you very much. Please enjoy this evening. Thank you for being here.
And now I'm going to invite Dr. Carolyn Heldman and Krishna Somandapalli to the stage. They will present our 2017 CJN 100, the top family films of 2017. And I just want to say a few words about them. Everyone's bio is in the program, otherwise we'd be here until tomorrow. But Dr. Carolyn Heldman is the associate professor at Occidental College in Los Angeles. She's also the research director and lead for all of our research at the Institute. It's a gift, it's a blessing to have Carolyn work with us. She is an expert in gender, politics, power. She is a very successful author. She's a very successful on-air commentator for CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and CNBC. And she's been featured in any documentary worth watching. Misrepresentation, The Mask You Live In, The Hunting Ground, Equal Means Equal, and she's a true activist. So thank you, Carolyn. And our other privilege and gift is to work with Krishna Somandapalli, also Dr. Sri Narayan, who will be on our panel at USC Viterbi School of Engineering, Sale Laboratory. Krishna is a PhD scholar. He's really a genius. University of Southern California, Viterbi. He's a member of the Signal Analysis Interpretation Lab. We call it SAIL for short. And he coordinates the efforts of the media, informatics, and content analysis. I just sound so much smarter by saying those words. And literally has been one of our lead engineers in helping to develop what GDIQ is today. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Hello, everyone. I'm Krishna. I'm going to be presenting some of the background of some of the research tools we've developed. Right. So why GDIQ? As Geena mentioned, it's all about data. And historically, media scholars have always looked at this as a way of counting. So you go into every frame, count the number of male actors and female actors present. And if you think about it, the amount of movies being generated every year, this is not scalable. So that's why we need more automated and scalable kind of analysis to scale this up. And how are we going to analyze this information? We look at it in a multimodal fashion. By multiple modalities, I mean video, audio, and text. These are different modalities. Now, we can look at representations of actors in these different modalities independently, as well as how they interact with each other. And that's where we come to cross-modal analysis. And this can help us scale up gender representations in these different modalities. And we can try uncovering the unconscious bias and try attacking it systematically using data. All right, what is GDIQ? Like I described, it's a scalable and automatic multimedia content analytics. And we look at all three modalities of audio, video, and text. To give you currently, the features are, we look at video in terms of screen time with respect to gender and race. And that is, we automatically identify all the faces in the movie, track them in time, identify the gender, and then at the end of the movie, we can generate a sort of gender percentage time that a female person was shown on screen. We do the same thing with speaking time. We look at what percentage of time does a male person or a female person speak on screen, speak on the audio, and then we estimate that as a speaking time. And another feature which we've been working on this past year is race from face. Can we automatically identify race from face in a scalable manner in an environment like that of a movie video? And there are some exciting upcoming features. Two things that we are really working hard are animated content analysis As you can imagine, animation movies are very different from live action. In live action, it's easier to identify a character. Identify a face and you're done. Mostly done. But in animation movies, you don't know what a character is. So we need to first automatically be able to identify what a character is, and then we can go on from there. And the other one we are working on is other thing that Geena alluded to in her speech about how the crowd gender balance is a crucial thing. So can we automatically identify these background characters who are non-speaking characters and then be able to estimate these gender presentation in the crowds? Two other things I'm going to go in more detail, looking at movie scripts, but I'm just going to throw out the acronym now so you'll be familiar with it. MCLAE, what we're calling MCLAE, movie character language embeddings. All right. There's been a significant and growing interest in automatically identifying race from face. As you can imagine, there's a lot of challenges here. To begin with, a taxonomy. How do you define race? Because race is predominantly a social construct, so it becomes much more challenging. So we make a distinction between race and ethnicity. Regardless of the definitional distinctions we make of what race is and what ethnicity is, classifying race is a very culturally sensitive topic, and as such, all the classification or all the machine learning methods we apply are being done with the utmost sensitivity and respect that this problem warrants. And ultimately, it's only for the interest of understanding and hopefully improving race diversity on screen. So in this work, we just focus on race because ethnicity is a much more, and we focus race only from the visual appearance of a person, from a computer vision point of view. As I described before, our initial approach is to just look at the visual appearance of a person and be able to automatically identify race. As you can see here on the right-hand side, those are the average faces of different groups of races that our machine looks at. Although they're visually distinct in some ways, it's really important to know that this is still a social construct and there are no known genetic underpinnings to this. And the taxonomy we use is mostly from a computer vision or a system point of view to make it more scalable. Right. This is an overview of how we classify race automatically. As you can see, we first identify a face and track it in time. And for each face, we have a system which automatically tries to classify the race into one of 5 categories. And it's important to note here that the system is still under development, and we want to make sure that we only report race when the system is very confident. So we identify another class called unsure. This is not a race designation, it's just something we use to say that our system is not confident. So that's how we represent all our results. And then we estimate the overall time of a particular person of race being represented on screen. This is a small demo. How many of you watched the movie Post? All right, I'm sure you'll enjoy this. So as you can see on the legend on the left-hand side, we identify male face and female face with different colors. And on the bottom left, you have identification of the race that is classified from the system. Could you please play this for me?
Can you guarantee me that we could go to print without endangering any of our soldiers?
You can't be considering going.
I'm talking to Mr. Bradley now.
Fritz, you're not gonna let her do this. She can't.
No, she can, Arthur. And it's entirely her decision.
Hey, you're allowing Mr. Bradley to lead you to folly. The legacy of the company is at stake, and if you want to protect that legacy...
This company's been in my life for longer than most of the people working there have been alive, so I don't need the lecture on legacy.
All right, so all this is done automatically. So you don't have to sit down, count faces. So you can automatically scale this up process throughout the entire movie. It's a small demo. Now I'm going to hand it over to Caroline. She'll present some of the results for the 2017 movies. I'm not done yet.
Krishna's not done yet. He will be back, and thank you, Krishna. So my job is to talk about the outcome of all of this wonderful technology. So starting with screen time. So the the GDIQ is different from other measures in that it is, as pointed out, it is an automated way to determine the actual amount of time that someone is speaking and someone is on the screen. It's not something that we can calculate by hand, and we have been doing this now for a number of years. And as you'll see in slides coming up next, the gender imbalance has remained somewhat persistent. So in 2017, and you'll notice that the N is 94 because that is the number of automated films. So out of the 100, we're now looking at the 94 that are non-animated that we can actually analyze. And male characters constitute 60.9% of the screen time. So male characters are showing up 61% of the time. There are 51% of women in the broader population, so you can see that that is a misrepresentation of what actually happens in the real world. In terms of speaking time, the gap is slightly larger, so 63.7% of the time. When someone is speaking in film, it is a man speaking, and so you can see, again, this persistent gender bias in terms of the amount of speaking time similar to screen time. And then when we look at race, the balance is a little bit better, but it is still not at parity. So 38% of people in the United States are people of color. This slide is slightly misleading in that there's a big category known as unsure. That is a category that includes mixed race, but it also could include faces that were too fuzzy or faces for which, for whatever reason, we simply could not calculate the race of the character with a degree of certainty. And again, I just want to reiterate, race is a social construct. It is a very real social construct. It functions and operates as though these are real categories, but when you get down to it, there's no genetic basis, and as the Census Bureau and now the GDIQ has discovered, and many other tech companies, trying to actually classify race is a very difficult thing to do, which is why the unsure category is at 15.5%. But with that said, we know that it's roughly equivalent, although white people are overrepresented in terms of face time, in terms of actually appearing on the screen in the top 94 films. Now looking over time, because we have done this analysis for 4 years, you can see that 2017 offers a little glimmer of hope, right? So it was pretty stagnant from 2014, 2015, and 2016, but a slight bump up, and it's a significant bump. It is actually a statistically significant increase over the 3 previous years. So we're seeing a slight increase in terms of female screen time, the amount of time, the percentage of time that women's faces, girls and women's faces appear on the screen. In terms of speaking time, we have not seen that same bump. So even though, again, we've seen a significant increase in screen time for girls and women in the top family films, we haven't seen the same for speaking time. It's still a big bias, almost 2-to-1 bias in terms of male versus female. And now breaking it down in terms of prominence, meaning leading characters, we analyzed 3 different categories or 3 different options for leading characters: female leads, male leads, and then male-female co-leads, or a mix of male-female co-leads. And we find that, again, there's a gender imbalance, right? So nearly 60% of leads in family films are men. For female leads, it's about 1 in 4, and then co-leads, about 15%, and that number has actually increased. So we see more ensemble casts in children's films in previous years. When we break it down in terms of race, there is a big misrepresentation in terms of the broader population. So 3/4 of the leads in family films are white people. About 10% are a mix of co-leads, and a person of color and a white person, or sometimes more people in ensemble lead cast, but there is at least one person who is white and one person who is a person of color. And then characters of color who are leads of fewer than 20%. In terms of box office returns, we find the same finding that we've actually found for a number of years. We can clap about this. So we have found the same pattern for the 3 years that we've been able to analyze this. I'll show you that slide in a moment. It's important to note that we're sorting on the dependent variable, which is a fancy way of saying our sample is already of the top grossing films, right? The way in which we select these films is that they are the top grossing family films. Among the top grossing family films, female leads far outpace male leads in terms of the amount of money that they're making domestically. We find the same pattern, by the way, with international box office, followed by male leads and then followed by male-female co-leads in terms of box office numbers. So this slide, a particularly important slide from 2015, 2016 to 2017, this is the gap, this is the percentage gap that female-led films make over male-led films. So this is not an anomalous finding in 2017. Again, we found this for 3 years. What is unique about 2017 is the sheer size of that gap, right? So in 2015, films that featured female leads made 18.7% more at the box office than films that featured male leads. In 2016, it dropped down to 7.3%, a respectable gap, but not as big. And then we see it shoot up, right, to 38.1% in 2017. We have often found in the past 3 years, the 2 previous years, we found that people of color leading a cast actually has been more bankable. We did not find this in 2017, and it's an indicator that it really does depend upon the films. Oftentimes the bankability or the numbers that we're finding really depend upon whether or not people of color and women are included in some of the really big blockbusters, right? Like Star Wars, for example, in 2017. So we did not get the findings that we got in previous years when it comes to people of color in leads, but it is important to note that if you have both at least one white person and at least one person of color in a leading role, that it makes more money than simply white leads or people of color alone leading a cast. And with that, Krishna is going to wrap up what is next for the GDIQ.
All right, I'm back. So what's next? So we are working on several threads, but I'm going to be presenting mostly 2 things that we have been working with respect to movie scripts. This is what we call a character network visualization. Let me set it up a little. How many of you have taken a metro ever? All right. So metro system is the best analogy for this. Think of each character as a metro station, and the connections between them are the metro routes, or in this case, if 2 characters talk to each other, then we have a line between them. So that way we construct a web of characters. And then we can now look at which is the most central station in this metro hub. That would be the most important character in the entire movie script. And then we can look at which is the most crucial metro station, say connecting 2 boroughs or 2 cities. That would be the most important character in a different way. Right. So this is a small demo from Inception. Could you please play this? So as you can see, there are different characters are represented as those nodes, and the shape of the nodes represent the gender of the character. Square is male and circular is female. And the different colors represent race. The different shapes represent race. They're mostly white characters in this movie, so they're all same shape. And the size of the node represents how many dialogues they have. So as you can imagine, the most central character, most of the times, the central character tends to have most of the dialogues in the movie. And as a byproduct of this entire test, we can also look at a generalized version of Bechdel test. Say if 2 female characters are speaking in the movie, but they do not happen to speak about a man. That's how you define Bechdel test. So we can look at right, and we can look at that in this sort of network setup. And we can, for example, those 2 nodes, the red nodes indicate that these 2 female characters, or rather the script, pass the Bechdel test. So what kind of results can we get out of this? Remember the main hub and the important hub in the metro setup that I talked about? So we can talk about two measures called degree centrality, as in who interacts the most, and betweenness centrality, who is the bridge or who are the bridges. So we looked at a data set of 900 scripts, and we looked at degree centrality across these gender groups. And we saw that across, when you look at all the movies together, you do not have a significant difference, or rather, male characters are equally important as female characters. However, when we start looking at specific genres, then we saw that almost all genres, male characters tend to be more important than female characters. However, not for horror movies. I thought that was really interesting. And then we look at betweenness centrality, like who are the bridges or who are the most important to the plot, so to speak. That's when we found that most white characters tend to be more crucial to the plot than Latino characters. Okay, this is the MECLE that I introduced earlier. It's movie character language embeddings. So the previous results, we looked at group differences. Is this particular attribute different between male and female? What we were really interested in is, can we identify the character's language use across all the movies? And then, if you get a new character, now using this universe of characters, can we point out this character in the space and say, okay, this character is very close to, I don't know, Darth Vader. So this is what we call embeddings. So embeddings essentially translate this natural language understanding of a concept to a mathematical space. Think this is a three-dimensional space. You have a point, you put a point close to it, then those two are similar. You put a point far away from it, those are not as similar. So that's what embeddings generally are. So we took all the movie dialogues, we took about 3 million movie dialogues, which had about 55 million words in it, and we constructed this embedding space. And now we were really interested to look at different patterns or different character language use that this space can present. We are big fans in our lab about Star Wars. So a lot of examples you'll see will be about Star Wars. So I hope you have your Star Wars trivia hats on. Oh, this example actually shows the case I was trying to make. So this is an example where, let's talk about synonyms. So television is the word we are interested in, and we look at the words closest to it. You get stuff like films, NBC, director, and so on. Right. And as a byproduct, we can already start looking at how similar is the language use related to words of certain professions. Here we were interested in 4 particular professions: engineer, doctor, pilot, and astronaut. And so for all the categories except doctor, female language use tends to be using words related to these professions much less than male. When I say doctor, that includes medical professions in general. So we suspect a lot of that difference comes from nurses and other sort of medical professionals. Right. So this was the Star Wars thing I was talking about. So that looks like abstract art, but let me break it down. So that is the that's the arbitrary embedding space I was talking about. So we took all the characters from Star Wars and put them on the space. Now we can all this is done automatically. Now we can cluster the space, or rather group similar things into several clusters. So say you can already see there's one big cluster on top. There's one big cluster on top. There are about 3 clusters here and 1 cluster there. So we can identify those groups. And because of the way we constructed this embedding space, these groups make semantic sense. What I mean is, the first group, for example, are protagonists of the Old. Leia, Luke, and Han Solo. So you can see all of them use similar language. When I say old, I'm referring to the first 3 movies. It doesn't mean and the protagonists of the newer movies, which is 2015, Rhea and Poe, they tend to lie somewhere closer, somewhere in the middle space. And funny enough, all the antagonists lie in one big cluster. So the language use is very similar to each other. And you can see actually the protagonist is the you. They're somewhere in the middle. That sort of reflects the kind of militaristic and combative language they're using in the movies. Another really interesting thing we can do with this is sort of track a character through, say, the Star Wars saga. So I'm sure a lot of you are big fans of Rhea Organa here. So we'll see how her language tracks through the Star Wars saga. So let's see if we can. Right, here. That's where the first movie began. So we have a few lighthouses, so to speak, because we need to talk about these characters in reference to other characters. So you can see the Luke, the light green. You can see the Luke light green there, the first movie, and you can see the first time Leia's language use was much similar to Luke. And in the second movie, it's much different. And then in the third movie, it moves back again. And this is the latest 2015 movie. And there are really interesting things here that, for example, Han and Leia, the language use of them is pretty coupled throughout the saga. You can see the Han here, and the distances, that's what I was talking about, is very similar. And this is a point of reference for Darth Vader. And this is Anakin Skywalker. So you can see how that space actually makes sense. And as you can see that Rhea Organa's role, or rather language use, keeps moving towards this direction, which sort of indicates the general. She becomes a general in the 2015 movie. So that sort of indicates a militaristic or leadership role that she's seeing. It has nothing to do with the dark side. Yeah, so the idea of this mechle is that we can have now we have all of these characters in a single space, and we can start looking at several attributes, like do they speak similarly? If they speak similarly, in what aspects? And then we can look at professions and other attributes of it. To wrap it up, we're looking at several directions in future. One of them is in the audiovisual analysis, we are looking at background scene detection. Like, what is the setup where people are appearing? Are they appearing in a kitchen, or the laboratory, or school, for example? And the other thing we are really interested in background character detection, and the way we are at least currently approaching it, is the way we are defining a background character or a crowd character is anyone who doesn't speak throughout the movie or at any point in the movie. So we first identify the characters that speak, or rather we identify them in the frame and then remove them, and we get the rest of the characters. And from dialogue language analysis, two things we are looking at, among several things, is humor and violence. So violence, we are able to do pretty reliably with identifying explicit use of violence, or rather that's a proxy for explicit abusive language. What we are working on is trying to identify the implicit use of violence, which is a much harder problem, as you can imagine. And there's a lot of subjectivity there. And on top of all of this, what we are really interested in is how do we connect all of this to impact? Caroline already showed you some of the results where female-led movies tend to gross better in the box office. So that's a very good impact point. So can we look at other things similar to this longitudinally in time? Say, for example, a TV show. How does this TV show, every episode, rate according to certain attributes of the characters presented? And finally, that we want to look at how these things relate to viewers or expert ratings, and how we can do this automatically. And that's pretty much what I have. Thank you for listening.
So why should you care about this, and what does it mean for you? And to really distill it is, GDIQ is poised to become a new standard. And the whole goal of this is to empower you as content creators, as chief diversity officers, as anyone who is really looking to put a gender lens, an inclusivity and diversity lens, and to really unpack unconscious bias. So it may seem quite technical, but what we're saying to you is we can help you. We can analyze your scripts, like Geena said, spell check for gender bias. We can analyze your moving content. Whether you're in a development phase, we can take you from beginning to end. So hopefully you will all be inspired to call us. We would love to conduct some research with you. We're available for presentations. And it's really about moving the needle forward, but doing it in a way that is fast and automated, because time is money. So I want to thank Carolyn and Krishna. Thank you so much for that. And so now we're really excited to have a panel around data for social impact. And we have an illustrious group of panelists. So I'm going to just shout out their name, bring them up in alphabetical order, and then we'll sit down and have a little chat. So first, I would love to welcome Erika Alexander, who is an actor, writer, and co-founder of Color Farm Media. Rhea Curry, who is the Deputy COO, 72 and Sunny, who is a huge partner of ours. Dr. Sri Narayan, PhD, who is our lead partner and engineer with GDIQ. Liba Rubenstein, who is the SVP of Social Impact for 21st Century Fox, who's our partner. We're very thrilled to be working with him. And last but not least, Megan Rice-Camp, who leads social impact for Google, one of our most critical partners that we have. Alrighty. And so we're going to do this in two buckets. We're going to have two rounds. Thank you, Courtney. So bucket number one is really understanding kind of legacy backstory. Why have these individuals and these companies chosen to focus on social impact? Why is it important? What are the initiatives that they're doing? And it's really about mission and purpose. So I'm going to just go alphabetical order, and I'm going to put Erika on the spot. And what's interesting about Erika is that she has straddled being an artist and a creator, writer, director, and also an entrepreneur now with Colorform, taking control of her destiny. So why is this important for you? What didn't you see growing up? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Well, one of the reasons why I think you're mentioning all those career slashes, because as a Black woman, there were very little roles. So you end up having to build skill sets in order to find work or create work for yourself. And that's what happened to me. So Color Farm Media, which I created with a friend, and we met being political, I built it recently to address some of that disparity of lack of inclusion and diversity. But I started when I was 19 years old. And I've been in this business since I was, for 34 years, frankly, since I was 14. So what you're looking at is a long line of me trying to build a skill set, writing and creating and being a speaker and all these things, just so I could act. But now it's changed, because as I got older, I realized that this was needed whether I acted or not. I wanted to make a difference for many of the people who were coming after me, people who I knew, women, Black girls, brown, it didn't matter. I thought things needed to change, and I thought that I could make a difference. One of the reasons why it's important is because representation matters. I think someone here mentioned, actually was it you? Madeline, the Scully effect?
Just say yes. No.
Yeah,
Geena did.
Actually,
Geena did.
Excuse me. Thank you. Geena did. And by the way, I want to say thank you for including me in this. It's very important that this exists at all, and they've done great work. So thank you. I'm really happy to be here. But you mentioned the Scully effect, and I have something that's very bizarre, and I'm not bragging, but I have something called the Maxine Shaw attorney at law effect. And so, very long time ago, I did this character. And I have found, going out on the street, people talk to me all the time, and they said, I went to politics because of your character. I went to college because of your character. I'm a lawyer. These are people who are heavy hitters: de Blasio, Marilyn Mosby, Stacey Abrams, who's running for governor of Georgia. And they all said that character had something to do with them feeling empowered and able. And so representation does matter. And you're right, if she can see it, she can be it. And there's very much a lack of those images out there. obviously, we're trying to do something that many people are doing like you and really making a contribution, but we're also trying to disrupt the financial models around it as well, because if you have a lot of platforms and people still sort of fall into, as you say, the unconscious bias of creating things, but they start to slip more into the things that they recognize, whether it was on the big three networks, or the big four, I should say, and then cable, then you're just doing more of it. And it's kind of a smokescreen. You're not doing enough change. So we're dealing with trying to find new models, innovative models, like with the blockchain, and create maybe security tokens around this. But that's a bigger conversation. But that's why I'm in it, because this exists because it's changed my life significantly to be a part of something as opposed to complaining about it.
So I just have one little follow-up. You were in Queen Sugar, and what was that like? Because that was what, all female-led directors Ava chose.
Ava
what was
DuVernay,
that experience like, considering other experiences that you've had in your acting career?
It was a heavy experience. She consciously went and found Black female and female directors to collaborate with, and that was a beautiful thing to see. But I spent my whole life in what I call the cultural ghetto. Cosby Show was not the cultural ghetto. That's as high as it gets. That's high cotton. But most of the things that I was in, we were called Black cast until suddenly we were called Black shows. And then after 2000, they segregated television. And you literally, was very difficult to find a show until Shonda Rhimes created one for Kerry Washington. And then she recreated that show to put a dark-skinned, female-led, dark-skinned woman like Viola Davis as not just the center of attention and the subject, not an object, but also a complex human being. And so I've been fortunate to be a part of a lot of Black cast, and we had a lot of Black directors and females consciously, because if you're of color and you're a marginalized community, people go out of their way. Also, I have to say and give some shout out to a lot of strong white men who weren't intimidated, and they really were trying to make a change, but they were going against the flow of not only the tide, but a lot of things that they suggested were just knocked down. So it wasn't from lack of trying often, there was no context or any data to show that it was valuable. So although I'm grateful for Ava's example, there were a lot of people who were trying to do it over and over again. It just seemed invaluable, or it was diminished because no one could quantify what it meant to the money end.
Thank you so much. So Rhea, in terms of improving the creative class, and I have to say, we had the privilege of doing a big study on advertising that we presented at Cannes Lion, and 72 and Sunny immediately connected with us. I think they're one of the most progressive advertising media companies in the world, global powerhouse, and it's just been a gift to be able to work with Rhea and Evan and everybody at 72 and Sunny. And so this wasn't a new fad for you or for you at the company, but talk about the evolution of 72 and Sunny from the standpoint that you've been mission and purpose driven while you're having to deal with pain in the ass clients. So we'll put that aside. Hopefully none of you are one of their clients in the room, but
we love Google.
But just talk about how you got to kind of where you are and why it's important for the company.
Yeah, for sure. And so I had one request from Madeline, which was, whatever you do, please don't make me go after Erika.
Oops.
And
well.
Here I am going after Erika. So thank you. But so, as Madeline said, so our mission at 72 and Sunny is to expand and diversify the creative class. And I think there's a really important point that I want to make here, which is that's our mission as a company. That's not our social impact strategy. That's not our talent and retention strategy. That's our business strategy. And I think a lot of times anything about diversity and inclusion and really kind of any aspect of social impact, really, it starts to focus on a moral obligation. Like, this is the right thing to do, and we're really good people. So therefore, like, we have to do this thing, right? And I agree with all of that. I'm not discounting any of that. That's all very, very true. But I think for us in particular, and probably the reason why all of us are sitting in this room, is that it's imperative to our business. And also making it the company's mission, not just our social impact mission, is that make sure that it will endure. People will come and go, leadership will change over time, but ideally a company's mission stays consistent over time. So it was just really important for us to make sure that all of our diversity and inclusion was really embedded into our mission as a company, not just into our social impact strategy. So I'll tell you a little bit about why. So I mentioned the creative class. Are we all kind of vaguely familiar with what that is? No? Okay. So it's a job class that essentially refers to what it sounds like. It's people who work in the creative industry, so advertising, entertainment, design, arts. There's a lot of fields that would be considered creative class. So it's our main workforce. You know, any agency, most entertainment companies, their workforce is part of the creative class. So that's important because it's the second fastest growing job class. So it's a whole lot of people that's growing really fast, and they make a whole lot of money. So super important for the economy and very important for the industries that I'm sure most of us are in. So the problem is that the creative class dramatically lacks diversity. When you look at the numbers about how the creative class demographically stacks up to general population, it's pretty dismal. Not entirely unexpected, but it's not awesome. And frankly, it's a major problem for a company like ours. Like the fact that the workforce does not reflect society at large doesn't bode well for our future. And it's not about the demographics. While that is important to, you know, have a demographic makeup in your company and your organization that reflects society, it's about diversity of thought, and it's making sure that you have different perspectives represented in all of the conversations as early as possible. And we've already seen that in our work and our output. When you have different perspectives at the table and different backgrounds and different sets of experience, all of the work in our product all of a sudden gets a lot better. So if we don't start shifting the demographic makeup of the creative class, we're gonna have a major problem in the future. And frankly, it's just not good for business. So we launched the mission about 3 years ago. And the first year, I mean, it's pretty easy for me to sit up here and I hopefully articulately talk about this mission. But, you know, getting there was no easy task. You know, there's a lot of conversations. You sweat the language, you really beat it up, you really make sure that it's something, I mean, this is important. It's not our social impact strategy, it's our company's mission. So we spent a lot of time just kind of focusing in and really honing in on what it is. And also socializing it. You know, it's really important that the entire company really embrace this and make it their own. It's really the only way it has any chance of succeeding. So we needed to get it out of the hands of just leadership and those few who created it and really get it into the hands of the rest of the company. That will be the future of the company. So that was kind of the first year or so. And I would say last year, we started to really realize that, you know, this isn't something that just we can do. Like, we're one agency. There is no chance that a single agency can start to actually shift the demographics of an entire group of people. So last year, we wrote the diversity playbook. And just a little bit of context, so we're an ideas company. That's what we do. We create ideas for a living. So our ideas are our product, and we hold them fiercely protective. We don't share at all. If we have a good idea, we make sure that it's a 72 and sunny idea. So this whole idea of the diversity playbook was really kind of foreign to us. And I was very nervous about oh my gosh, we're going to share this. What are other people going to do with it? What's going to come of this? But, it was important. We really needed to engage the broader advertising and, hopefully, ideally, the broader community of creative class to embrace this as their own. And, it's definitely, it's not a Bible. It's not the book for how-to. I don't think that there is any how-to answer. I think that we're all really learning it and building it as we go. We learn something new every day. I learned something new tonight. So, it's our guide. It's what we learned. It was our experiences. It's what we learned, what not to do. There's probably a lot of what not to do in it, but there's definitely also a lot of what to do. So I would say that was our kind of second big chapter. And so, really in the first 3 years of launching this mission to expand and diversify the creative class, we saw a lot of very clear and measurable impact. And I would say before we had this mission, we did a lot of things, which meant that our resources were spread very thin. So really one of the things that's been very powerful for us is just having focus. We have a single mission, and it's the filter that we use for everything our company does, and it really helps us to drive our business decisions. So I think that's part of why we've seen so much impact so quickly. So everything from the composition to our organization, we now have 50% female representation on our leadership team, which is awesome.
Woohoo!
And definitely something that we're proud of. It gives us clarity on what partnerships, programs, and organizations to invest in. Partnerships like the Geena Davis Institute, Free the Bid. We just got our 3% certification this year. So it really helps us focus on...
Can you explain what that is? Not everybody may know what that is.
The 3% certification?
Yeah.
Oh
and
my
the
gosh.
Free the Bid.
Okay. I'm going to totally butcher 3%, but I will explain Free the Bid. Okay. So Free the Bid is really about getting more female directors behind the camera. So,
in advertising.
In advertising. So, the idea is getting more female characters written into the scripts is definitely a great start and something that should be easy for us to do. But the other thing is getting more female talent kind of behind the camera. So, and there's a lot of ways to be behind the camera. Writers is a big one and something that we focus on at 72 and Sunny as well. But Free the Bid was started, and I don't know who it was started by, so I'll have to follow up with
Kat Gordon. Wasn't Kat
Not
Gordon?
Free the Bid.
No.
That was 3%.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Which was really an initiative to get more female directors bid on projects. So a common practice in advertising is that you triple bid a project. So you get treatments and costs from 3 different directors. And a lot of the argument for why there's not more female directors is that the pool of talent just isn't there, which, if you looked at from a pure number standpoint, that is probably likely very true. But because there's not as many, those jobs aren't as available, and it's more difficult to build their reel and get the experiences that make them more likely to pick up jobs in the future. So Free the Bid is an initiative to make sure that you include at least one female on every triple bid that you do. And so we started that, I think, last year. And I don't have the exact percentage offhand, but we have definitely increased by, I would say, at least double digits the amount of female directors that we hire for jobs.
Bravo. Bravo. So when we talk about unique perspectives and experience, having the privilege of working with Shri and his team at SAIL has been amazing because although we have probably become more of a priority than they ever wanted us to, there's a lot of global impact work that they are doing. And so I'd love Shri to kind of bounce it up, go a little bit broader, and talk about why machine learning is important for social impact. You operate in a lot of buckets, way beyond entertainment, and what the heck is SAIL? Because it's not a boat company. And just give us a little bit of a broader perspective, if you may.
Thank you. First of all, shout out to you and Geena for starting this partnership. It's amazing, partnership that keeps us real. And to Carolyn and Krishna, wonderful presentation, and the whole crew that's sitting there. A lot of people work on these various ideas. Kudos to all of you. SAIL, we sail in data, right? SAIL stands for Signal Analysis and Interpretation Laboratory, mouthful. What it means is basically, engineers try to do things that are useful, right? And what we try to do in our laboratory is to see how engineering, particularly evidence-based, data-driven way of thinking about how we can understand, support, and enhance human experiences. That's been sort of our mission. By that I mean, let's take, for example, we work on different kinds of data, like audio, speech, language. You heard some of that, a slice of that, in Krishna's presentation. We look at images, we look at, physiology and so on. What do we try to do with it? For example, early on, we worked on sort of not just voice recognition, but actually when two people don't share a language, how do you build a technology that can help people communicate? Imagine our use case was inspired by LA County hospitals, right? A lot of people there don't share language or culture with people that care for them. So can we build technologies can support these people communicate better, and reach a goal there? And that was very exciting for us to turn, what is now becoming very common, right? Now you go to inside your home or in a car, we have these devices listening to you and playing the music you want and so on. But you can turn it around and say, well, can it help people? And that's one example. Likewise, we can think about many different ways of taking how we understand humans in this world and see how we can use it to sort of improve lives, support people helping people. Another big domain is like mental health, an area. What does engineering got to do with it, right? So you can think about it. Take for example, like autism spectrum disorder, right? A lot of things there are sort of represented in terms of differences in social communication, understanding one another's emotion, being able to hold a conversation. So the way people try to sort of screen, diagnose, and even treat is based on humans trying to understand someone else's interaction. So imagine like, technology coming and supporting, helping, how people's, intonation is, the way people use language, how they interact, eye contact. Imagine these tools, helping this human expert and trying to sort of, better characterize and understand what the strengths are, what the skills are, where there's challenges, how can we meet them. So we've been doing all these things, in support of diagnosis and support of treatment. Are we, actually making the change we want to make? Just like we were saying, right? Geena was saying, hey, can I flip this character and say, what difference it can make? Can we use technology to not only try to intervene, but also see, is it making the change, studying the impact? So mental health is a big area. I know we're working on a number of different things, like, looking at addiction, trying to sort of unpack psychotherapy, right? So psychotherapy is an area where we use humans to help humans, other humans change, right? Make a change, behavioral change. Do we know what works for whom, when, and how? Not really, right? Think about it. It's a huge sort of a societal need. Can engineering play a role there? Sort of, can we understand, unpacking this? So in all this, right, it's just a tool to help people, not the end in itself, right? So fast forward to our things that we are doing here in the entertainment world. So what was started as, hey, as Geena said, like when she first saw representations, they knew that there was something going on there, but we wanted to put data behind it, understand what exactly, that it is happening is the first step, but how is it happening? Where can we make a change? Can we look at the sights that we see, the sounds we hear, dialogue or interaction on the screen, words people use, are certain characters made to look dumber than they should? Are we giving agency to people? So now we can actually use these, what has become common word. I was in New York last week, saw ads for machine learning and deep learning in the subway. I was just like blown away. So we have arrived, engineers, once you're on the subways in New York. So anyway, we can use these sort of techniques or tools to actually help sort of shine light, help connect dots where it's difficult, maybe fill gaps where we are not able to. Human perception and cognition is amazing, but limited, how much ever we like. So can we support these things to help, make a social impact? So that's kind of what we try to do.
Has a government clearance that would make your hair fall out. So thank you, Shri. So moving on to Liba, when we think about deep learning and broad spectrum, Liba straddles probably every division under 21st Century Fox. And not only is she social impact, but she's also leading philanthropic partnerships, investments, volunteerism. And I do want to give a shout out because 21st Century Fox has been financially supporting the Institute since like 2013. So, and we are kind of growing with them. We worked with you on your director's program, and as you've evolved, we're evolving with you. So we're very grateful for the partnership. So with that, I mean, you've seen this change. So can you give us a sense of what you're prioritizing and also, I will do, should I, what? You want me to jump to Megan and then back to Liba? Jasmine, is it? Megan has to take a plane, so I'm going to jump to Megan really quickly and then back to Liba.
Thank goodness.
Sorry,
I was going to say,
commercial moment.
If I'd known, I would have requested, do not put me after Shri.
Did my makeup
hard act to follow?
Happen? I'm like, what? All right, so hold that note, please, and we'll circle back. So, Megan, what's great about Megan is she was thrown into a almost 9-year relationship that we've had with Google and YouTube, and we've worked with like 6 different divisions across the company, and she got thrown into make sense and make everybody do what we want them to do for us. And she's done it with grace and poise and lead social impact for Google. And it's essentially using Google tools to change lives. So as much as you can tell us a little bit about that, that would be great, and what you're trying to do.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm thrilled to be here with you, and I'm just so inspired by what everyone's saying and all the work of the Geena Davis Institute. So I work on social impact partnerships. And what I do is I sit with different product and engineering teams across Google and look at how we can make a difference and how we can build products to influence social impact areas. So this might be something like, one thing we do is we work on crisis response. So during natural disasters, how are we providing people critical information to stay safe? Or we work on civics. We have a civics team, and we work to help people understand how to vote or where to vote and some of this basic information. And so I sit with some of our teams in search, in maps, across our machine learning groups, and I work to bring in external partners. And these partners really act as our guides in these spaces where partners like the Geena Davis Institute have such a wealth of experience and knowledge in doing this. That's where we rely on their feedback and want to figure out how we can help empower through technology some of these spaces. And so we leverage that from an advising standpoint, but we also work with partners to provide critical information. And so a lot of that depends so much on data that our partners provide. And in some of those examples, we work with FEMA for, crisis response, or we might work with the Voting Information Project to get polling places out there. So it's both taking in from partners and working with our partners, but it's also seeing what we can enable through our products.
And because I know you do have to leave, is there anything you want to talk about that you're particularly proud of that's happened in the last 2 years? Is there a trend that you're seeing in terms of data analytics for social good that you want to shout out? Anything like that?
Sure, I can talk about, obviously, this whole space right now. We really at Google, we focus on our users, and there's a saying at Google, focus on the user and all else will follow. And so when we think about data and looking at data, we're really looking at what our users are asking for and how can we serve our users better. And so over the last year, we've seen a tremendous focus and interest, of course, in some of these movements, looking for role models. And what we've done a few things to continue to address those and working with partners. One thing we did for International Women's Day was use a product that we have called Cameos, which we worked with different influencers or different partners to have video responses on Google search to questions like, why are women strong? Or what does International Women's Day mean to you? And we had some really amazing answers that people could explore right there, front and center on search. And then Courtney talked a little bit about the work of the CS and media team, but with partners like Black Girls Code and Geena Davis Institute also, we were able to not only launch a series on YouTube, Red, hyperlinked, to really inspire girls who wanted to go into coding careers, but then we were able to launch a study afterward to say that of the women who watched the series, 11% were more likely to say they would enter a STEM career. So I think that's where we're really seeing a lot of impact, and we're using those signals that we're understanding from what users are looking for to influence how we can launch products and better serve the needs of our users.
And can you just explain a little bit about YouTube Red? Because everyone knows about YouTube, but not everybody may know about YouTube Red and what's happening.
Yeah, so YouTube Red is really our YouTube subscription service. So it's direct programming, and users can subscribe to a whole different set of programming from YouTube as a whole.
And you're using some of your big YouTube stars to kind of cross over to the platform?
Absolutely. So we work very extensively with YouTube creators across the platform.
Great. Well, I know you have to leave, so I'll let you go. And
All right.
I'll go back to Liba. So everyone thank Megan for coming down from San Francisco. Back to Liba. Okay, we were just getting to the good part. So if you could just give us a sense of the evolution of social impact with 21st Century Fox, what you're prioritizing, why you're prioritizing those initiatives, and just give us a little flavor.
Sure. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Megan. And it's just a total honor to be in everyone's presence here and to be on this illustrious panel. As Madeline intimated, social impact for 21st Century Fox means a lot of things. It means both the substance of our product, so it's about the stories that we tell, it's about who tells them and how we make them, it's about how we operate as a company, our environmental footprint, both of our physical spaces, the mini city that is a studio lot that has its own power plant, what does it mean to have a responsible environmental production when you are replicating an ocean or blowing up a car? What does it mean to engage in the communities where we operate, where we're setting up shop for a production for 6 months or something? And in any case, it means a whole lot of things. So as Madeline said, I focus on kind of the traditional CSR, corporate social responsibility, like philanthropy and volunteering, kind of culture of giving back across the organization, as well as sustainability. Diversity and inclusion has been a pillar of ours from day one, and we've helped to sort of spin that off into its own team, as it well should be, over the last year. And then the piece that I think is most relevant to this conversation is really about, believing in the power of storytelling to drive positive change in the world. To Geena's point, the ability to both look into our history and tell stories that haven't been told, to show what really has happened, and then also to create the future that we want to see, and to understand the power that has. And really, for my team, because we do not develop scripts and we're not choosing what we make, but we are finding the opportunities to, through partnership, and I think that's really, really important and something that's been echoed across the panel, through partnership, find ways not just to amplify those stories and the themes that come through those stories, but to manifest those themes in real-world impacts. So a lot of what we try to do is to connect the stories that our businesses have chosen to tell that have these, really powerful threads or themes, and bring on partners that are going to help bring those themes to life and either help, be able in those amazing rare instances to really quantify the inherent impact of the storytelling, or to drive action kind of out of and inspired by that storytelling. So as folks have mentioned, it was one of these things that we just kind of had a hunch that we were going into Women's History Month and thinking about the finale of this season of The X-Files, and we came across a phenomenon that was just sort of anecdotally brought up in journalism over the years. I don't remember when the first mention was of this idea of the Scully effect. And we're like, we would love to celebrate this. We would love to get it in front of people. We have no idea if it's real. And these guys, to their credit, moved incredibly quickly. And I think what we pulled off was pretty amazing. But we were able to do a really robust study of mostly Gen X women who essentially grew up on the X-Files or grew up in that era when the X-Files was on air for the first 9 seasons or whatever, and really map the legacy of a character that's been around for 25 years. There's not that many opportunities that you get to really sit with a character like that, or revisit a character, have them come back at kind of different moments in your life, and really be able to look back and see the impact. And I think what it demonstrates is 2 things. It's the flip side of all the negative data that we see, right? It's all of these things are problems that we need to solve, and if we solve them, we can really affect, representation really does drive the choices that people make in their lives and change people's imaginations about what's possible. And it's also, I think, kind of begs that question of like, why don't we do this more? So that's been a really exciting initiative, and we can talk a little bit more about it. But to your question about the change over time, I'll say I've kind of been in and out of this space over the course of my career. A lot of my career has actually been in digital, has been in-house at social media platforms doing social impact. And the last time that I was more directly in entertainment, there was I don't know if it was an unwritten rule, it was like a pretty explicit rule that, especially with films, we could not message about the social theme of a film around the theatrical release. It was just like it was not done. It felt like it was, the marketing folks would freak out about it. It was distracting from whatever the core marketing message was. And to come back several years later and be in an environment of a really different media mix, an environment where the convergence between advertising and technology and TV and film, we're basically all kind of doing the same things, and we're certainly all competing for the same time and attention of the same audiences. And it has actually, with all of the sort of the threats and the uncertainty about the future of the industry and the business model, in some ways it's opened up a lot of opportunity, because you see the value of finding those stories that are not just going to get butts in seats, but create advocates and create, people who connect so closely with the stories that you're telling that they really become evangelists on your behalf. Like, to your point, that's good for business. Like, this is not just a matter of what is a nice thing to do. This is a matter of rolling with the punches of a really rapidly evolving industry and finding the stories and the ways of telling stories that are going to connect deeply with people and reflect their experience. And that is the way to create the kind of engagement with an audience that's going to drive, ultimate kind of revenues. And that's the North Star, that's sort of the goal. Not everything we do has, you can draw a straight line between the social impact work and the revenue, but we certainly believe, and the rationale for all of the things that we do is ultimately about the sustainability of our business and the growth of our audience and the ability to tell stories that resonate and that people want to engage with.
Thank you. I'm going to jump back to Erika. So when we talk about what Liba was saying about stories that resonate and developing stories that can connect with your audiences, you and Ben decided to create Colorform and you had specific material in mind and certain stories that you wanted to tell, regardless of platform. And if you could give us some specifics now of what material you're choosing, your writing, just all of that, and just some examples of what you're trying to do.
Okay, we've set up a horror thriller at Lionsgate. We're doing a movie about the Boys Choir of Harlem.
Wait. Horror?
Horror.
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 Why? Why horror?
That's the crazy accent I got from Arizona and Philly.
And Brooklyn. Go figure.
It's a rough ride. We're doing a movie about the Boys Choir of Harlem with Ava DuVernay's producing partners, Tammy and Paul Garnes. I just did a collaboration with Joss Whedon, who gave me a call to do a spin-off of the Giles character. She put him in a city school, and he meets a black girl vampire who's over 200 years old, learns a little bit of something about monsters and men in her point of view. Also doing a animated series talking about the type of work that you're targeting, called Little Erika and the Watusis, and also a collaboration with Bernice King about a girl who's a math and science genius, and it's called Bernice, and it's using her background as inspiration to talk about how often you'll be raised in a very religious context, but what if you had the mind of somebody who was scientific and you were locked in there with the legacy of your the people around you, but you wanted to break out, and that's called Bernice. So we're doing a lot of things. We're hustling, really flying. And Concrete Park, which is a graphic novel that I wrote with my partner, Tony Puryear. And I just have a quick story for you, and then I'll be out. One of the reasons why Concrete Park is a comic book, it's by Dark Horse, there's volume 1 and volume 2, is because we went around for several years trying to sell something, a science fiction series. And we had a really disturbing meeting with a president of a studio. And right when we started to pitch, he said, let me stop you right there. He said, black people don't like science fiction because they don't see themselves in the future. And we kind of stared at him because we were two black people, and we thought, wow. We didn't know that. But he tells us why, and he tells us he did apparently this movie, and this movie had a black star in it and a white female star at the lead as a lead, and it didn't do well. But they did a focus testing, and during the focus testing, a young black man just stayed there. Everyone left, but they stayed there, and they came from behind their curtains or wherever, and they said to him, "Is there anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to ask?" And he said, "Yeah, I just want to know how'd that nigga get to Mars." Now this is somebody telling us this as why he would not do anything with leads of color in it. And we had to correct him because I don't think he must have told this story several times without having any pushback. I mean, he's a man of power. But we had to push back there because we thought it's absurd, but also we knew it not to be true. So we said, listen, for black people, the past is painful, the present precarious, but the future is free. We always create in the future because we don't have ancestry or, history to draw from. We're making stuff up. African Americans are 13% of this, great nation's population. Many of them are in jail. They can be, marginalized in all sorts of ways. But as culture makers, we're in the forefront. So we did not want to hear that we didn't belong to the future because we couldn't imagine it. James Brown put music on the one. You have people like Louis Armstrong, who I think is a scientist in math, because look what he did for jazz, and how he had to think abstractly. And you get a group of people who have to make things up, to have to create new histories for themselves, who are the futurists. And plus you had Octavia Butler, you had Samuel Delaney, you have Nnedi Okorafor, all these people who are fortune tellers. They're always incorporating race and issues like that inside of their tales because it so identifies where they are and how, if we don't figure this out together, we will all perish. So one of the things we'd like to do to talk about that, maybe this could be a 20% Googler, you guys get the 20% project, you guys do that, is a street cred index. Because often we're not inside of these analytics and data. We need to be asked, because I know my mother's not liking and Googling stuff the way other people might, because she doesn't have that in her background or context, or they suspicious of it. And how is this being used and all that? But a street cred index would give us more in line to who our heroes are, not just who are trolling people and grab the oxygen out of the room, but who makes a social impact on them. I think you'd be surprised at the names. I think you'd find people that, from Tanking the Bangers on, people who are operating in the dark, people who somebody like Motown's founder would have found in Detroit. And we need a little bit more of that conversation and discussion. But that's what we're doing, Ben and I, at Color Farm. We're trying to have those discussions, and we're certainly trying to be collaborative in everyone's effort to focus a little bit more on people who are not necessarily inside the data.
And in terms of, bravo. And in terms of pitching and pushback, have you been able to use data? Have you been able to use box office ratings? Like when you're pitching, because we know so many of you in the room get really frustrated when you're in these pitch meetings, and has data helped you at all in this process?
No, because it's corrupt for us. It's one of those reasons, I can just cite you what Monique was saying. You may not like how she was saying it. She's not politically correct in how she might be placing it. But one of the things she's talking about when somebody's saying, how much are you worth? And they're talking to her, and they're saying, you're worth this. And she's saying, wait a minute, all those years, all I've accomplished, the Oscars, this or that, there's no way to quantify my value in your space. But often, if it's, again, there's numbers there, but it's not being used in a way, or we're not conscious of it. It's not being publicized, and often they didn't care anyway. If it didn't have, the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 stars that they recognized as being of color, then that was a wrap. Luckily, we have now Indian stars and Asian stars, and they're starting to see and change. And basically, there are no borders. What's really happened is the world opened up. A lot of the executives got younger. They were less afraid of making mistakes. Again, this is all about making mistakes. I'd like to say we used more data. We certainly could talk about how you can make something for 2 or 3 million with a black cast, and it would at least get 10 to 15. But it didn't seem to change the game that much, or the temperature in the room. And I think it will now, because now it's in their best interest. Everybody's trying to get get an audience, even a so-called niche audience. But 40% of the people watching television are of color, and that's just the truth. So it's not just, you're not doing just a good thing. As you say, it's dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, and for any of you who look at the MPAA data, the largest audience for theatrical is African Americans and Hispanics. So, why is Black Panther a surprise?
Yeah. I just think, to your point, Erika, like, it's wonderful to celebrate data, and data is such an important tool. And without it, these arguments fall short. But we work in an industry that is, very proudly a mix of art and science, where I think data is especially easy to discount when you are working with folks who just feel like they know. But also that even in parts of the business where data, should be, where we think we're working with rational actors and we're working in a rational system, it's a human system. And I think the implicit bias that folks have operates in how they look at data and what data they find to be important as well. So there's I think we're all in the project of amassing as much data as we can so that these points are sort of incontrovertible. But we know that we're going to have to keep proving it because the system is so ingrained to do things the way it's always done things.
Well, while we have you, were you surprised by the Scully effect data? And I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Carolyn Heldman, who actually executed that study for us and developed it in record-breaking time, because I think we got a call in February and it went on air in March. I don't know. We only need 2 weeks, right, Carolyn? She's like, yeah, sure. Were you surprised by it? Because it wasn't just good data. It was like, what? Did we make a typo? It was that kind of data.
Absolutely. I mean, we were thrilled. And I think, you hear some of the other data, like Megan just quoted, 11% of folks who watched the YouTube Red program say that they intend to go into STEM. And I think that's more on the scale of what we expected to see, especially because it wasn't reporting intent, which I think is, again, what's so amazing about being able to look back at the legacy of a character, as opposed to, for example, we've done a ton of work around hidden figures over the last couple of years, on many fronts, and we've done public-private partnerships with the State Department and brought women in STEM from 50 countries to the States under the umbrella of hidden figures, and we've done scholarships and we've done screenings, and the only thing that we could prove at this point is, how it has inspired people to want to do something or to intend to do something differently. This is an opportunity to actually see how it affected people's lives. So I think given the delta that we usually see between kind of people's optimism and their self-reporting of good and positive behavior and how it actually turns out, and I know this from my sustainability work also, people intend to do things much more altruistically and sort of in a more empowered way than they often do them. I think because of all those things, we were really, really pleasantly surprised at the significance of the impact.
And we were really thrilled. And what was also great is not only did they just say, okay, hey, thanks for the data, see you, bye, they created a whole social media campaign about it and put a lot of their resources behind it. So you can hashtag Scully Effect and check it out. And it was wonderful to see that combination of social activation in addition to the data really being brought to life. So I'm going to
listening people's stories about kind of bringing that data to life.
So I'm going to jump back to Rhea and then I'm going to close on Shri. So Rhea, data and how has data helped? What does data do when it's an emotionally charged, possibly conversation? You mentioned kind of being that person in the room, always kind of pushing. Just how does data help you?
Yeah, I think I think that there's two things really, and so for us for 2018, just kind of going back to our mission. So one is we have 50% female representation on our leadership team. The story is not as rosy when it comes to racial diversity. So that's a huge thing that we're going to focus on. And then the other part of it is looking at our work. So when Geena and Madeline, you guys came to our agency, I think it was last fall, I think we all kind of, we saw the data, it was last year's data, but we all kind of had that moment of like, oh my God, what would our work look like? And frankly, the answer is probably it's going to be a very similar story. And so we can make all of the change within our organization that we can. We can have all of the right numbers, but at the end of the day, if our work isn't writing that future, if it isn't also representing the society that we want to live in, then we're not doing our job. So I think, a big thing for us is, first and foremost, is just that data brings things into the collective awareness. It's kind of the first step in overcoming that unconscious bias. So I think that's been really, really eye-opening for our entire organization. It's like once you see that data point, you cannot unlearn it. And you're just inspired to act and to do something. So, for us, and we are really kind of just starting out on this journey. We're a young company still, so I think for us we're in the early stages of just kind of absorbing it all and starting to learn kind of then, okay, what does that mean? What can we do about it? And so I think quickly I'll tell you another kind of anecdotal story that Madeline was mentioning. So we work in advertising. A lot of what we do is we provide creative feedback and critique. And that's always uncomfortable because you are critiquing someone else's work. That is their heart and soul. That is what they do for a living. And that's just always a tough situation to be in. It's made even more tough when you are a female. And oftentimes, over the course of my career, a lot of coworkers, similar situations, you're the only female in the room. So when you're giving some feedback that like, she kind of seems a little cliche, or are you sure we can't make her a little more like this? It's easy to dismiss it. And it's easy to kind of say, oh, well, that's just an opinion of one. It's just one spot. you're being overly sensitive, or it's just me projecting my own opinions on the work. And what data has really allowed us to do, and I hear these stories right after you guys came to the agency. I can't tell you how many women came up to me and Evan and a lot of us in the organization, and we're just like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. It's like, it's this great leveler. It takes something that was always a very emotionally charged and a very difficult thing to do. It's just giving creative feedback. And it just makes it more objective, and it gives you these tools and the ability to talk about something that frankly shouldn't be sensitive, and it really kind of takes a lot of that emotion out of it. So it's really allowed us to engage in conversations and have dialogues that I feel like we just weren't really equipped to do before we had that data. So that's one thing that has been a really pleasant surprise for me.
And we're just really excited to be partnered with you. So I want to close with Shri, because clearly Shri and his team have been the mastermind in bringing Geena's vision to life with GDIQ. And you've seen what we can do, and you can see where we're going, but maybe you could talk a little bit about, we're operating in advertising, we're operating in film, we're actually going to start operating in TV. We'll be publishing at the end of the year a TV and film report that will become kind of an annual signature report. And I want to give out a shout out to Nielsen, who's providing us with all the TV data. So we're excited about that. But there are some development challenges, and there's many people in the room that can help us, and Krishna alluded to it, but can you talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with animation? Because once we have animation, then we can have gaming, which is so huge, and we can get into VR and AR, augmented reality, et cetera. So can you talk a little bit about those kind of challenges, what we need, what we welcome, because that then helps us give you a complete end-to-end tool and solution that you can use.
Thanks, Madeline. So first of all, now another group that I want to kind of give a shout out to is Google, right? Google brought us all together and has been continuing to be a great partner, both sort of strategically and sort of technically. Hartwig, Adam, my collaborator, so I want to thank them, and Courtney and Megan. So I like the way Lebo was explaining, the metaphor of stories, right? Whether it is in entertainment media, on the one hand, we are trying to use sort of engineering tools, as we said, to kind of shine light on what stories are being told, how are they being told, who's telling them, sort of characterize content, just to shine light on that. But the big part there's lots of challenges, so animation content, let's take that, for example, right? How do we even begin to sort of, attribute sort of human-like characteristics to sort of objects like teacups and, lampposts with, eyelashes and so on. But they do have a big impact on, particularly young minds, right? You kind of begin to sort of implicitly sort of provide certain biases, right? That you have to have princesses look this way, and and certain bad people sound this way, and so on. So can we actually begin to characterize them? So for content like animation, right, working together with creators, right, who are creating this, and and trying to sort of help connect the dots and trying to understand that in a way that's more quantitative and objective. And then see whether it was part of the storytelling, part of the creative process, or what if type of scenarios can be done. Again, a tool. The other part actually sort of expanding this out and saying, right, how does content sort of connect to experiences? And sort of, we talked about the Scully effect, right? So that's a very, very good story, saying, well, this particular sort of experience actually caused a specific social impact, right? It inspired people to take on certain professions that were not considered that cool, right? Like scientists or engineers. But here's a very cool female who was a good role model, not just for women but also for men, right? Or scientists, and so. Actually, we can use this, all what we've been talking about now, machine intelligence and data science and so on, to actually, as a tool for discoveries, what perceptions are sort of certain type of experience is creating, not just on the screen and entertainment media, but also news. Like, again, a form of, so the boundary between entertainment and news is kind of, iffy right now. But also scholarly media, right? We know about the Holocaust archives that our Shoah Foundation has put together. They tell stories, and we want to know what impact it has on people, how it influences, and how it changes not just perceptions, but also their action and behavior, right? We want, when young girls like my daughter, wants to see a particular sort of, representation, they want to feel sort of good about themselves, make choices that they are actually proud of and happy about, right? And that they want to become who they want to become, right? And it's not sort of stereotyped. So I think engineering has that power, right? We are sitting, data is as good as what we put it to use for, right? And so we can do a lot of good things with it. And this is a great example, right? How we are using sort of the pipeline, as you point out. But this can't be done just by engineers, right? Just like this partnership, this is just a small use case, right? We are entertainment, sort of leaders, people who are sort of in the business, people who are scholars, social scientists and scholars, working with engineers, and Google providing the scale, support, tools, and all working together to answer a very specific question. Now imagine this sort of multiplying, creating a force multiplier effect, right? So I think but the challenge, access to content is difficult, right? Because it's IP. And people need to have the courage to say, well, to actually read your own writing, right? I hate that. Like when I write a paper, I don't want to read it because it's awful the first time reading, because getting notes it's hard. and so, but having tools to help us with that process, and doing it collaboratively is easy. So people want to partner and collaborate, and together with tools, this can provide scale. It can be economical, but also hopefully, it will talk to dollars and cents. Actually, all this is true, right? We can actually study the impact of, okay, if you have this content, we can have predictive models and can say, well, what box office impact it would have, but also sort of, where in the world, we can actually do things at global scale these days, right? With the potential of the network world. A lot of experiments can be done, right? We can actually, imagine doing sort of focus groups with 10 people, or doing few screens, and few selected. Now you have any network place can be used as your test platform. You can actually check this. It doesn't need to be any more some hypothetical based on small data. You can actually do it at scale. So all these are possible, but together partnerships are sort of key to that.
And so if you want us to help us, help you, all of you have a call to action card, and when Geena was talking about that 99% and all those comments, it really came from us collecting these, every year. So if you would like to work with us, you want to help us out on animation and gaming, you would love us to come in for a presentation. If you're not a member, if you'd like to join, if you want to attend our upcoming events, we have a few more events in LA, New York, Chicago, San Francisco. Please just fill this out and leave it on your seat. I want to thank our illustrious panel. Thank you so much, Erika, Rhea, Shri, Liba, and Megan. We want to thank Dr. Carolyn Heldman and Krishna for their wonderful presentation. We want to thank all of you, and good night.
Good night.